Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Black. We're going to be starting the listening forum soon. And I just want to welcome you and say I'm so glad that you are joining us. I see Sharona is into the room now.
Hi, honey.
Hey, how are you?
Okay.
How's your week been?
My week. It's been okay, not the greatest, but at least I saw that you helped your brother get married.
Yeah, that was from 2 years ago.
Oh my, okay.
Yeah.
It just popped up
Yeah,
again?
you know how Facebook pops up. His anniversary was the other day.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I just got a chance to just say, happy anniversary to him. And it's funny because it popped up, but it wasn't me popping up. Yeah. So hold on.
Okay.
People are in the
So,
waiting room. I'll be letting people in, and then I got to figure out how to mute everybody. I'll let people come on in for a minute here and say hello as they're joining in before I mute everybody. Hi, Judith. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello.
Hi.
hello.
Good to see you, ladies. Vanessa, adjust your screen so we can see the top of your head.
Okay.
There we go.
Judith, are you part of Deborah Darvick's friends?
Yes. In fact, I just met her last night.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. We're doing like a meditation Zoom thing together with a friend of ours.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm Sharona.
Hi, Sharona. Thank you for this.
And I see
Hi,
somebody.
Naomi.
Hello,
That's Naomi
Sharona.
Levine. Okay.
Hello, nice people who Sharona gathered together.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi there. All right, people are coming
It's
on.
nice. This is a very meaningful way for us, this first time for us doing this on a Friday right before our Sabbath. Luckily, sundown's not till much later tonight. I do know that I could have gotten 100 people in like one more click of things, but certainly by Facebook. But many of the requests that I did have come my way were, we want to do this. Let's just make sure we do it on a weeknight. Just because
on Shabbat.
Yeah, because people are like, for instance, my food is now marinating.
I'm gonna be cooking while I'm listening.
Cooking.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
What I know, because I know Vanessa is also part of several different organizations, and she had several people who wanted to be able to join the night. And I said, no, let's wait, because I don't want to overwhelm Sharona. You didn't want to overwhelm me.
Well, it's good that we have going. That's good.
Yeah, but we could definitely easily have 100 or more people.
Right.
So when we do the next one.
Yeah.
People have already been asking me, when is the next one? So there will be a series of these, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Valerie.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, good to see you all.
Hi.
Okay, there's Susan.
Hi there.
Hi, Deb. It's Sharona. Hi, Susan Lichterman.
Hello, Sharona. Thank you for inviting me.
You are most welcome.
What a great idea.
Oh, Stacy needs to put her, oh, okay. Stacy, where are you?
She's coming on board now.
Oh, okay.
It just takes them a moment for they kick in.
Sure.
So we have Stacy's room, not Stacy just yet.
Right. Oh, there's Stacy. Hi, Stacy. Oh, her audio. Oh,
Hi.
hi,
Hi, everybody.
good to see you. All right, now next level dance, is that Rona? Who is that?
Not sure. Next level, you want to show yourself?
Oh, maybe not.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
She
me.
said yes.
there
Got
you
Ruth
go.
Allen, who is
Oh,
also
and Ruth Allen. Okay, hi, honey.
Hi. Oh, good to see
Okay.
you. Oh, my neighbor right there.
She said her neighbors.
Okay.
Fabulous.
All right, you got somebody else there. I think that's Rhonda.
Dance. All right.
Good evening, Rhonda. She's still clicking in there.
Okay. Okay.
Are you able to hear us, Rhonda?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
Evening.
Right now, everybody gets a chance to talk for the first couple minutes while we're waiting on others to join us. And after that, everybody's going to go on mute.
Right.
Okay. What would you like us to say about ourselves?
Well, you know what, Sabrina, I did promise people that we're going to start promptly at 5:15.
And we have started. This is part of
Yes.
starting.
So my part of my invitees, I want to introduce you to a special woman, Sabrina, who I met a few years ago. We worked on that wonderful, very challenging opera about the Holocaust together that was hosted by the Detroit Opera House, if any of you attended that program. And it had a bigger message, even though it was focused on memory and the Shoah, the Holocaust, but this bigger memory of that is so pertinent to what we're going to be kind of hearing this evening, and that's the residual effects of all the kinds of racism, anti-Semitism, all the isms that are negative in our society that just kind of infiltrate our lifestyle and our environment, especially in our little world that we are living in. And hopefully just by the members of
You want some nosh?
Rob, we can hear you.
But you only eat the cashews,
Well,
right?
somebody may need to be on mute already.
Yeah, Rona. That's Rona. Next level dance. That's her husband. It's their anniversary. We need to wish them a happy anniversary. But in any case, so as I was saying that Sabrina and I have worked on a variety of programs together since then, especially with a nonprofit organization that we're working on. And then we've been helping her sweetheart husband, who works with boys in Detroit with the scouting program. So we vacation together, we've enjoyed each other's company, we lunch, we see movies, but I'll just tell you, I think that there's very few in both of our communities that do all those variety of kinds of activities. And for some of you, my hope is by the end of this session that you'll be inspired to reach out to a former coworker, a neighbor, somebody whom you maybe have a child parent that was in a school, maybe somebody who haven't seen in quite a few years, and just reach out and say, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you, I'm hurting inside, and I'm just here for you. I think that that's important. I kind of took that on this week when Sabrina and I first started a few minutes ago talking. She asked me how my week went. And I have to tell you that I made a lot of those phone calls and I heard stories that did break my heart. And so what I'm hoping today is that we're going to be listening. We seriously, a group of women that we've come to gather tonight, and it's just a start. I'm hoping that everybody else, everyone here, will kind of reach out and make a dedicated effort in the following days, following weeks, to reach out, start the conversation, gather other women, other moms, and do other Zoom kind of conversations. And I know Sabrina and I will help you in any way that we can. So Sabrina, I'm now turning it over to you.
All right, thanks, Sharona. I'm gonna ask ladies if you put yourself on mute, except for Rhonda right now. Everybody but Rhonda. And again, thank you, Sharona. So when I asked Sharona how her week went, I could hear in her voice the same thing I heard when she called me. So she called me a few days ago and I could just hear brokenness. And I thought, oh my goodness, what happened? Who died? Not realizing that the pain and anguish she felt was over what was currently happening in our community, the things that were happening all around us. I've known Sharona for several years now, and like she said, we've been developing this relationship. We are more than just professional friends, but we are personal friends. Like she says, we have been on vacations together. We've sat at each other's tables. We've been to each other's homes on more than one occasions. Our husbands have their numbers in each other's phones. I mean, so we are doing the work necessary for developing relationship. And I think that's part of what we're talking about tonight, even as we do this time for listening, is that relationships will come out of this, partnerships will come from this, that initiatives will come from this, that we can look at doing that will definitely impact change in our communities and in our nation and around the world. Sharona knows that I'm a global citizen and my ministry calls me all over the world. So even as we were looking at the pandemic with coronavirus, we have a greater pandemic with racism and all the isms that she talked about earlier. So tonight's conversation is a listening conversation. When Sharona and I talked earlier this week, she said, Sabrina, I want to gather a group of my friends to listen to a group of your friends. And so I know you may have questions, you may have thoughts. There is the chat box there, so if you want to put some stuff off to the side, I would ask that you send your chats to me or Sharona, not to everyone, because everyone may or may not be able to respond. But send it to me and Sharona, we'll follow back up with you. You can also put your contact information in there, how we can follow up and get in touch with you, because I know we'll have people who will be joining that will be friends of friends. And so I have invited some friends. And, you know, as we start talking about the conversation, it is a conversation about race and about injustice and inequalities. It is about Black men and Black boys. You know, I posted something earlier this week, a picture of my husband and my son. And as I posted, I just thought, you know, it breaks my heart to look into the eyes of these men whom I love. And I know, you know, you may love a Black man, like a Black man, have a Black son, you know, have a Black friend, and to know that it's dangerous for them to be on the streets. And that's not on every street in every city, but there is a target on their back. And that's what I hear a lot of times Black men saying, it is not safe for us. And so home needs to be a safe haven, because I can't fight a war in the street and fight at home. And so home is a peaceful place. Home is a place where I can come and be real and be me without pretense. Because sometimes we have to wear a mask just to get along. You know, when I asked my husband the other day, I said, you know, what were the lessons that you taught our son growing up about how to navigate the city? And he said, Sabrina, you don't want to hear all the stuff I said to him. And I thought, I do. You know, and so after I talked to him, and I'll tell you what he said later, but after I talked to him, I called my son and I said, what did your dad teach you about growing up in the city? And he says, Mama, let me tell you. And he started naming all these things, and they literally paralleled everything my husband said. And I thought, wow, you know, and so I'll tell you some of those lessons, but I want to invite Rhonda to kind of share, because Rhonda was married to a Black man. She's raising 3 Black sons, and I'm sure she has had lots of encounters. And so Rhonda, if you can tell us a little bit about who you are and your encounters with race, racism, injustice, and inequality.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina, and thank you so much for having me. you know, you have to stop and think about what is happening to you. And it's funny when you think about it, because so much of it, unfortunately, I take for granted that it's just the way of life, that you have a Black husband and Black sons. And if they stay away too long, you wonder if something's happened to them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but my 17-year-old, my oldest son, began driving a year ago, and we had to give him the rules, right? There are these rules, and I think these are probably some of the things that Sabrina was talking to try to make sure that they're safe coming home, in terms of how to behave when they're driving, and if they encounter the police, if they go to mall, you know, to be careful that they may be followed, and you know, if they are talking to a white girl, make sure that they don't get too close to them because they could be accused of rape. I mean, just things that you don't necessarily think that you would have to tell a child, but you do because you're trying to keep them safe. And then knowing that you share these things with them in hopes of keeping them safe, but it may not matter anyway because they may end up like George Floyd. And so those are the types of things that that you deal with regardless of your socioeconomic background, even though you may not experience it as intensely because of your socioeconomic background, but you still experience it. I grew up middle class in Detroit. My dad was a professor at Oakland Community College, but that didn't mitigate, you know, that these things didn't happen. My dad was a professor, and he wear a shirt and tie to work every day and have his books, but he was always mistaken for the janitor, you know, because he was a Black person. People would just see his face, and he would tell me all the time how he would integrate the classroom many days, and his students would tell him, as he tried to incorporate all of American history, when are we going to get to American history? He was a history professor. When are we going to get to the real American history, as he would integrate talking about Native Americans and the contributions of Blacks and Asians? But his students would say to him, when are we going to talk about real American history? So those are the types of things, you know, we encounter and just have to adjust to. And even as a Black woman, I haven't experienced it as much as my Black sons and husbands, and have to, you know, be concerned about them getting stopped by police just because driving while Black. But there are things that we encounter also. I remember a few years ago, one that's very blatant for me was on an internship. Actually, I was interviewing for a job, and I was excited about my internships. I had worked at the Chicago Tribune and Newsday in Detroit on my merit, right? And so the editor said to me, tell me about your jobs. And so I'm excited because I had gotten these flagship internships, and he says to me, oh, I thought they got you there, stuck you in a corner, and said, we've met our quotas. So it's like they just assumed because I was a Black female that I was hired because of affirmative action and not based upon my merits. So that's just a summation of some of the things that I've encountered in my life.
That's a good start, Rhonda. Thank you. And we'll come back to some of those things. You know, as Rhonda was talking about the issue of driving while Black, African-American men also have to deal with walking while Black, jogging while Black, bird watching while Black, but just doing anything while Black. And as a Black woman, those are not necessarily the things that I have to deal with, but the thing that I consider is that I don't think about it often. But the reality is I'm Black. Did anybody notice that? You can't tell, can you? So I can never hide in a crowd. People always know I'm Black. But the challenge I run across is, do I be the nice, silent girl in the back? Or do I speak up and then sound like the angry Black woman? You know, and so that's always a challenge. So as long as I'm listening and nodding and taking notes, it's okay. But as soon as I ask a question or make a comment, then it's, oh, is she mad about something? It's like, no, I'm just trying to join the conversation like everybody else. And so I've realized that over the years, and that can be very stifling. I mean, clearly I have a voice and I have something relevant to say, in most situations. Now, I ain't got to say something about everything, but I have something to say. But I have to often ask myself, should I speak up or should I wait? And that's something you probably don't have to deal with. When you have something to say, you just raise your hand and put it out there. And sometimes you don't even raise your hand. But I did have an encounter driving while Black. And this is funny, and Sharona will remember this because I was leaving her house from one of the meetings that we had. I know she covers her face. And we're out in the suburbs, and, here I am with my police car. I drive a black Crown Vic, and it was late at night in the middle of the winter. And here I am, little Black girl in a neighborhood I probably shouldn't have been in, quote unquote. And my car gets stuck on an ice slide. And I can't get up, and my car is sitting there, and I'm calling Sharona, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I see the police car coming, and I'm thinking, yay, it's the police. Then it dawned on me, I have on a big black coat with a black hood, and I thought, oh my God, I'm sitting in the residential neighborhood, stuck, and a cop is coming. I immediately took my hood off my head, put my hands up to say help. Like I'm not armed, I'm not doing anything. And I let my window down. He got out of his car, walked down the slide to say, ma'am, are you okay? And I thought, oh, thank you, a nice cop. Now, why would I have to think all of that? Why couldn't I just think, okay, police to the rescue? But here I am sitting here terrified, thinking, I hope nothing happens to me. I'm trying to explain, why am I here? But he was wonderful, very gracious, and I'm watching his badge number just in case. But he had me get out of my car, go to the other side. He got in my car, drove me up the hill, asked me if I was okay, if he needed to call anybody for me, if he needed to help me find my way out of the neighborhood, which again was a little something, but I didn't go there. I just said thank you. So again, not situations that you have to deal with probably. Vanessa, I'm going to ask you if you would unmute yourself, and if you can just kind of share about your experience dealing with racism and isms, and think about raising your grandson and experiences that he may have had.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Harris, and I have had quite a few experiences. I live in West Bloomfield, Michigan. I've been out here for 28 years. And I even had an experience personally driving up Orchard Lake Road on a Sunday morning in my company vehicles. My background is in the pharmaceutical industry, over 28 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and had my daughter and another young girl in the back seat. And I stop at a light, and a police officer pulls up next to me, toots his horns, and I look over, and he calls me the B word. And I couldn't believe it. I was just stunned. And then when the light changed green, he just went on. Well, I've shared that story even with the Farmington Hills, one of their outreach police officers, and he apologized about it. But that had to be about 15, 20 years ago. I don't remember exactly. But that was one of my, just very, very scary as a Black female to have a police officer who you think they are, doing their job to protect the community, and to, be in my company vehicle and have this officer get my attention and then use the B word. I, like Rhonda, have had to talk to my grandson. He's a high school student. He's a junior this year at Bloomfield Hills High School. And I'm telling you, for the last 2 years, he's very, very smart. He has like 3 classes in the AP type of courses. He's an A student. He's very athletic, and he loves football and all of that. Well, his freshman year, he's so talented, they wanted to put him on the varsity team. And when they did that, then he was around high school students, young men that have, their own vehicles, they have their own boats, and they go up north to their cottages, and they do all these wonderful things. Well, Christian, as a, African-American male, he was trying to figure out, well, why can they do this? Why can they do that? So we went through some tough times. Even with some of the kids vaping, he was trying that. Some of the boys, driving pretty fast, or, using their mom's car. He did that too, unbeknown to my daughter, his mother. He took her car out along with some of his friends, and they all were driving to McDonald's like 12 something at night. Police officers saw them, and thank God that my grandson, we had to talk with him. He did not run, and he was telling his friends, don't run, but of course they ran anyway. And the police officers, first of all, he did not have a license. So, but they followed him home, told him to go on, and we came outside to talk to the officers, and they were genuinely nice officers, and we were so grateful for that. And they gave him high regards to his skills as not running like some of the other boys did, and they even had some girls with them as well, and they happened to be white females. And as Rhonda said, you have to have that talk with them, that you don't want to do anything that could cause suspicions of you being too sexually active or touching, or some kind of sexual engagement. So that particular incident with the police officers was excellent, and we even had hugs from them. Just because we do pray for our officers, and we're very grateful for the ones that will do the right thing in this community.
Thank you, Vanessa. We'll come back to you. So I had mentioned earlier about some of the lessons that my husband taught my son, and my son said he learned from his father. And so a couple of those kind of goes back to what Vanessa said about don't run. So my husband told my son that if you're ever in a crowd and the police pull up, try to scatter graciously, like just kind of break up the crowd. But if people start running, you stand still. Don't run. And I thought, don't run. I said, why would you even need to run? I mean, if the police pull up, why would you think run? And then he said, and if you have to run, run zigzag. Don't run in a straight line. And I thought, what kind of foolishness is that you have to tell somebody to run zigzag? You shouldn't have to run at all. But then he also said some other basic lessons. He said, don't stand in a corner in a group of 3 or 4 or more. He says, don't look like you're congregating somewhere. And he says, when the crowd gets over 4, you step away and start another little group. But don't be somewhere standing around outside a building or doing anything, because you'll look like trouble. And I'm thinking, here's my son growing up 12, 13, 14. How do you tell a 14-year-old you're going to look like trouble? I mean, that's not the son I'm raising. I'm not raising a young man who's going to be in trouble. So why do I need to tell him somebody else is going to think that's how you look? But then the other lesson my husband taught him is that when people are getting in a car to go somewhere, count how many people get in. And if it's more than 4 Black people, you get out, whether it's male or female. But don't look like you're riding through town causing trouble at no point. He says, take a second car if you need to, and never ever be in a car with 4 Black guys. He said, you're going to look like somebody that just did something that somebody reported. Yeah, and again, just awkward things to have to hear. I remember a situation with my brother a couple of years ago, and I tell you, it broke my heart. I wept sorely for days behind this. He had just left my dad's, and they both have migraines, and so he had gotten a migraine pill from my father, and he was getting ready to go visit somebody. He was in Dearborn, and he stopped at a restaurant, and the police pulled up on him and grabbed him and threw him up against the car, and he was trying to figure out what was going on, and they said he looked like somebody. They didn't give a description. They looked like somebody that they had just heard about. They searched him, and he had 1 pill that was for a migraine in his pocket. They arrested him for drugs. My brother ended up having to be in jail overnight, and when I saw him the next day, it was like they had stripped his manhood from him. I mean, he said, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't figure out what I had done. I was stopping to get food and on my way to visit somebody. But because he was in Dearborn and looked like somebody, and I just thought, my God, help us, and just broken over that. So when I think about my son, I'm thinking, I'm so glad that I didn't know anything like that happened to him until today. As I'm talking to my husband and getting these lessons he taught him, and I'm talking to my son about things your dad told you, he says, yeah, Ma, because I didn't tell you about the time when Dad had to pick me up from the 8th precinct, because I'm thinking, excuse me, what? Like, what do you mean picked you up from the 8th precinct? And he says, yeah, we were out and this happened and Dad had to come get me. And I'm thinking, I'm so glad you guys did tell me about that. Because again, as the mother, I would have been wanting to know, well, what did you do? How can we avoid this? What do we need to change? But the realization was he had not done a thing. He was just the wrong color in the wrong place. And what's your place? And see, that becomes a part of the narrative as well, feeling like you have a place that you have to be relegated to. We have some other ladies on the line. I want to ask them to go ahead and chime in. Donna, if you're prepared, if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of talk some about the Black experience and what it's been like for you raising sons and lessons that you've had to teach them about just how to survive.
All right. Hi, ladies. My name is Donna Marks. Very good topic. I raised my son by myself. And as many of the ladies indicated, that was one of my concerns, is being a Black mother. His father was not around, so the things he needed to survive. My son grew up, and he was a fairly good kid. He never really.
Donna, you're fading in and out. I'm gonna come back to you, Donna. You're fading in and out right now. I'm gonna let you get someplace situated. I'm gonna ask Latrice.
Okay.
You can unmic yourself and go ahead and share, right. And Donna, we'll come back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Hello, ladies. So I'm outside actually watching my two boys play in water right now. I have a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old son, and of course a 5-year-old daughter. Thank you for inviting me to this call, Dr. Black. I think this is a really good opportunity to have dialogue. I was 9 years old when I first saw my two older brothers pulled out of a car and put on the ground. We were in Redford, and we were inside of my grandmother's Lincoln, and they were pulled over and falsely accused of looking like someone, falsely accused of stealing somebody's car, even though it belonged to our grandmother. And I was forced to sit in the back seat as they searched my brother's pockets, searched the car, and asked to be quiet. And I'm 38, so that was about 30 years ago. And most recently, my husband and I, we were looking for a house, and we ended up in Canton. And we decided to look at this house. It was a great house. And as we were there, we noticed some police officers began to pull up around the property, and didn't think anything of it. We were with our white realtor, who was in a Mercedes. And as we left him and left the house, we were pulled over on Lily Road inside of the Holiday Market parking lot. And we were questioned about why we were there, and asked us if we stole a wallet, and do we live in the neighborhood, and whose car were we driving. And I think about the time gap between the time that I first saw my brothers put out the car and harassed to like being with my husband. And this isn't our first incident. We've also lived from Detroit, but we've lived in Texas, and we lived in Oklahoma as well. And he's had other incidents like where they'll say, oh, you crossed the line, or you didn't use your blinker. He's like, yes, I did, but reasons just to be pulled over. And I'll be honest, raising two Black boys, having nephews, even raising my daughter, it feels scary right now, right? Because in 30 years, again, the first time I actually saw it live, I was 9. And of course, my brother said that wasn't the first time they were harassed, but the first time I've seen it with my own eyes. And to think 30 years later, we're still dealing with some of the same issues. And I'm a really solution-based person, and I'm just really ready for us to have solutions. And my husband runs a mentor program where he works with 10 high school boys from Central High School. And they all have talked to us about experiences of, issues with the police and other, people as they're trying to get to a job, or as they're trying to walk through a neighborhood. And, I am just at a point where, again, I'm just want to be solution-based, and I want us to really pay attention. Like as a mother, like I feel like this is a cry to all mothers to say, how can we help each other? How can we unite? How can, excuse me, that's my nephew in the background. How can we also invest in programs that are ran by other African Americans that are funded? How can we help legitimize mentorship programs to teach these young guys to integrate and create diversity amongst each other? I just, you know, if I can speak to anything, you know, my plea today on this call would be that as mothers, we just decide that this is wrong on all levels to treat anybody different, and that, you know, we need dialogues, we need integration amongst our people, we need tough conversations, and we need funding to support programs that help to educate people, because this is a real issue. And I watch my husband educate these young boys every single day, and I can tell you that, you know, even thinking about the mentorship programs and opportunities that exist, they're not equitable for a lot of African Americans. You know, sometimes it's safer to donate and support organizations who look like, you know, how can I say this, who look like what's normal in our world. And we need to make sure that we're supporting organizations that are doing some real grassroots work in the community, and bridging relationships with police officers and giving training to police officers. But police officers aren't the only ones, right? Also, just want to make the point, like, you know, the influence that's needed in these corporations, right? Because systemic racism parallels in a lot of the corporations. These kids of all sorts need internships and opportunities, you know, to help support their future, and people need to experience and be very experience that diversity so they can really understand what we deal with on an everyday basis. So I'll end with that. But ladies, thank you for allowing me to share my experiences. I'm raising two wonderful Black boys who, you know, I'm hopeful. I haven't given up, and I'm counting on all of us on this call to make their future bright. And it takes a village to raise these kids. And I you know, I'm almost brought to tears right now just thinking about even being a middle class mom. I still need support because they don't see my boys like that. And you know, it's so important that we support them in their education, and they have the same opportunity. So ladies, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for this dialogue. And I'm going to cut off before I start tearing up because this is very emotional for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Latrice. I appreciate you sharing. You know, even as you talk about it being systemic and how things need to also change at a corporate level. When I was talking to my son earlier today, he was saying, Mom, he said, you just wouldn't believe some of the things that even go on at the job. He says, we just had a company-wide meeting where they were talking about what's going on right now with the Floyd situation, or I shouldn't say the situation, with the murder of George Floyd and murders of other young Black men. He says, you know, on this call, they said they were sending stuff out. And they had already sent out one package that included like hand sanitizers and masks. And he said, I didn't want to say anything, but you've always taught me, speak up. And he says, in the package that they sent out, they had 2 bottles of sanitizer and they had 3 masks for them to wear on the job. He says, Mama, you wouldn't believe all the masks were Black. And he says, why do they think that me as a Black man want to put on a Black mask to go somewhere and get shot? He says, I look like a criminal in a Black mask. He says, why didn't they think of a bright color or something with the company logo on it or anything? He says, but that's like a setup. He says, I felt like they were sending all the Black people on the job in to be shot, to put Black people in a Black mask. And again, he says it was probably just insensitive on somebody's part because they thought they were being helpful. But as he's talking, he also shares about, you know, his children. My son lives in Springfield, Missouri. He's in a predominantly white neighborhood. We have 4 grandchildren, and so his children there, 2 are college age, but the 2 small boys still live at home. And the 2 small boys, I shouldn't say small because they're like 13 and 15. The 15-year-old is what we would almost say bright light and almost white. You know, he could almost pass. The other one is a lot darker. You know, he's not as dark as I am, but he's clearly a little Black boy. So when the 15-year-old wants to go for a run in the neighborhood, he's fine because he blends in. When his brother wants to go for a run, his older brother has to go with him to make sure he's safe. What sense does that make? I mean, why can't he go for a run too? I mean, he's in the neighborhood. The neighbors see him. They know he lives in that house. But my son made the point. He says, Mom, they have Doberman Pinschers. They have German Shepherds. They have Pit Bulls. All the dogs run free. But I can't let my boys run free in the same neighborhood. That's a problem. Donna, I see that you've stopped. You're someplace where you can unmute your mic and just kind of share a little bit with us, please.
All right, thank you, thank you. And so, yes, as I was saying, my son, I have one son 3 daughters. And my son, I saw growing up, because I had 2 brothers I grew up with. One day they stopped my brother, and I was not around, but I heard afterwards, one of the cops that was there at the time was from our neighborhood, who said that they had told my brother to run, and he wouldn't run. And the friend cop told us that they was going to shoot my brother. He had done nothing. So raising a son as a single mom, that was always my fear. I raised him the best I could, and he stayed out of trouble. Actually, today, he's a police officer himself. My son, he started off, and he was in a predominantly white precinct that he went to. Well, after some time, I had a conversation. I was like, so son, how you like it? Now, this was a job I really never wanted him to take. I wanted him to go into nursing and all of that. But I remember asking him early on, why do you want to be a cop? And he said, Ma, is so much crime and hate out there. And so coming from my son, I just thought, wow. And I wanted to support him in whatever dream he had. And so anyway, when he got this job in a predominantly white precinct,
You muted, Dana?
sorry about that.
Okay. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay. He wanted to lead a company, and what he said was there was so much racism within the police force. It was predominantly white. He had encountered a situation where a Black woman was stopped. She was arrested, and it was something minute. I believe it was some kind of traffic problem. Anyway, she didn't have a driver's license. They arrested her, put her in jail, let her go when she, the next day or whatever. After they let go, they plotted down the road to stop her again, arrested her again. When my son saw that, he was like, I got to get out of there. He did end up getting a transfer, but he took a pay cut. And he said it was something to witness, being in a police force where you think you're there to help and serve. The racism, not only with him, he said many of the police officers didn't talk to him because he was Black. He was the only Black. He ended up, I think last year sometime, to Dearborn, and we had a conversation thereafter, and he loves it there. I still worry as being a mom. I'm now married, and he has my husband, who he calls his dad, is definitely very instrumental in his life and our lives, and talks to him often. And some of the things that we talk to him about is being fair and just when he's out there on the streets, because some of the things that we as Blacks have to endure. It's a sad situation. I personally cannot attest to it happening to me. I have felt by looks, the prejudice, the racism. And so I'm so on board. I think it took a time like this to bring it to a point. I thank you for this platform where we can express our views and our experiences. And so thank you so much.
Thanks, Dana. We're going to be shifting the conversation, and again, I know for some of you listening, you may be thinking, okay, now why are we having this conversation again? And it's because it's long overdue. It's because Sharona made the call, and Sharona and I both are activists in a sense. We both get engaged, we both get involved, and we both have platforms where we know that we can bring people together to impact change. And so it is more than just let's have the conversation. It's more than just let's hear what they have to say. We do want you to hear what we have to say. But the other question that keeps coming up is that somebody asked me the other day when I told them about the conversation we'd be having today, they said, you know, why do Black people want to keep having the same conversation over and over again? And I thought, well, partly because you didn't hear it the first time, or because you weren't really listening when we said it before. And that's kind of what's happening in the streets right now. And so people are wondering, why is everybody so angry? Why are people so volatile? And it's almost like, you know, how you've tried to talk to somebody and you get a sense they're not listening to you and you say it again. And at some point you go, do you hear me? And yelling doesn't make them hear you any better. They're not deaf, but you almost want to feel like you have to shake somebody and say, just pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you. And so there have been things that Black people have been trying to say for a long time that people have either not heard and or ignored or didn't do anything about it. And that's the other part of hearing. Sometimes, you know, you may hear what I say and not take any type of action, at which point it leads me to believe that maybe you didn't hear me. And sometimes people don't know what action to take. And so part of this listening conversation is to talk about what people are dealing with, what the problems are, but then also talk about what actions we can take. Before we make that shift, we do have Deborah Perry on the line. Deb, if you can unmute yourself. Deborah was also a single mom raising a son. And so Deb, if you can talk about some of the lessons that you taught your son or concerns that you had as a mother.
Well, pretty much some of the same concerns that have already been mentioned, you know, about when you're out in public, this is how you should act. Never run from the police. You know, if they stop you, you know, make sure your hands are always visible. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't run. You know, but with my son, I really never had any problems with him. Then he kind of had men mentors too that kind of helped me, being a single parent, raise him. So I didn't really per se have any issues, but I knew and was very well aware of things to tell him as a Black child of what not to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any personal experiences with racism or injustice or inequality yourself that you can think about?
Well, I think in terms of being on the job, worked for a law firm out in Troy, and it was myself and one other African-American that worked there, and we were like identified as the two Black tokens. And it was probably like a 15, 20 attorney law firm. And they hired another female African-American attorney, and she didn't last long either. They saw I had a conversation with her, and she had said that she was told that she just couldn't cut the mustard. And so they ended up letting her go. And so that kind of seemed to have been the norm for, you know, the particular law firm that I worked for out in Troy. So we knew that we had to kind of like walk a straight line. And then myself and the other only African-American had conversation, and she had mentioned how her and one of her counterparts, in terms of pay, she ended up having the lesser pay and than her, you know, Caucasian counterparts. And she ended up actually suing the firm and ended up winning the firm. So yeah, it was very much prevalent. I was aware and understood that there was a difference in treatment as well.
Thank you, Deborah. You know, it's interesting as Deborah talked about prejudice in the workplace, you know, and being the token. And I know a lot of times in places that I was at or at different organizations, I was the Black person. And I never had an issue with it. I owned it. And so I just wanted to go ahead and represent and represent well. But the things that I would often hear is, wow, you're intelligent to be Black. Wow, you're articulate to be Black. Wow, you're pretty to be Black. And so it was all these like, that combination doesn't work together. You know, it was almost like, because I'm Black, there should be something deficit or something inferior. And so I ignored a lot of that. And my husband says that I'm pretty much non-combative. And that would be true, but it doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean I didn't feel some kind of way about it. But I realized arguing the point and going head up and becoming the angry Black woman was not getting ready to serve me well. And so I learned how to basically adapt, fit in, go along with the program, and accomplish what I was there to accomplish. And so even as I think about that now, I almost want to feel some kind of way about that. But I lived through it already. And so at this point, there's no sense in going back and feeling bad about what's past, but I can impact change for the future. And so let's talk about the future. So Rhonda, if you could speak for a moment about why do we need to keep having this conversation? Why do we need to have this conversation? You have to unmute yourself.
I think the conversation is important to continue to have, as you've stated already, because you never know when this will be the conversation that makes the difference, right? And so we need to continue hearing it, because people tend to soon forget or just want to move on like everything is nice and neat. Things don't happen like that in life in general with anything. We're very complex human beings. And so we need to continue to talk about this until people have an aha moment. And I think we're seeing that now even in the nation, because as we know, George Floyd's death was not the first one that happened. It was the third or fourth that we've heard within the last few months. But this was different. And we're seeing the difference now. People are finally saying things are different. When you hear white people marching in Howell, Michigan with Black Lives Matter signs, there's a shift that's occurring. And I think that would have happened if we did not continue to talk about it. Because again, you never know when this conversation will be the conversation to make the difference.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. So we talk about the conversation that might make the difference. When my husband found out I was going to be having this call today, and that Sharona had called me, he started laughing. He said, "What are you and Sharona up to?" And I just kind of laughed, because he knows that she impacts change, and he knows that's what I do as well. And he says, when people ask about why do you need to have this conversation, and you're meeting with a group of Jewish women, they understand why you need to have this conversation. Because Jewish women and Jewish people have the conversation. They don't let you forget the Holocaust. They don't let you forget that people were enslaved. They don't let you forget hard bondage. And even as they say their prayers, they pray, don't forget. And as they celebrate different holidays, they talk about don't forget. But yet and still, they want us to forget all the things that we've had to endure and go through that are impacting where we are now and potentially where we're going. And so we want to go to some different places, and we do want to see some change. And so I'm going to ask each of you, and so ladies, I'm going to be calling you at random. Be prepared to talk about what would you like to see change? What would you like to see happen? You have a group of women who are on the phone who really want to hear what you had to say. And I got to tell you, this is not all the women who want to participate. I have people who are texting me now, so I keep looking down saying, hey, I'm trying to get on the call. I'm trying to get in. And I know Sharona said, look, if we want to open this up, I can get 100 women without a blink of it. And Vanessa said, hey, I can get 100 women. So we could have all had a big crowd of people, but we wanted to do this initial forum just as a small gathering to talk about what can we do? And then let's talk about some bigger things the next go round. But what can this group here begin to do? And so Latrice, I'm gonna ask you to start out as you think about having this group of women on the call, a group of women who are concerned, a group of women who are taking time out, who would be somewhere at a family dinner right now saying, I want to hear what's being said and know what I can do to make a difference. Speak to that for a moment.
All right. And again, I have kids in the background. They're having fun in the water. But I would say, honestly, I'll give you an example. I had the chairman of my company asked me about mentorship. Like, hey, we feel like youth mentorship is great. He said, I want to start something. And again, I thought that was a fabulous idea, but I also told him that instead of starting something, how about helping to legitimize the organizations that exist already and stand them up? Because I'll tell you, resources are very hard in certain communities, right? Like if I'm an African-American woman or male and I'm applying for a grant, sometimes it's very hard to get if those people aren't in my circle. And so we have counterparts who are white who are able to raise the money for the mentorship programs, but there's an organic mentorship that happens among people. You guys know this, like who look like each other, right? Who are really leading. And so I think it's important to support those, identify those organizations. I'm happy to provide a list of some organizations that are doing really great things right now in the city. But, you know, support those organizations, get a network of mentors together, right, to go and also support Embody, not just in like financial giving, but also use your time to, like, you know, talk and get to know these organizations and these people who are making differences in the city and encouraging good relationships with police officers in good communities. I would also say if you're involved in any type of legislation, right, like we need to talk about the school systems for our kids, you know, and how do we, you know, make them better? How to recreate schools of excellence for African-American kids, right? Where they have same opportunities after they graduate to go to good schools and colleges. I would also say keep dialogues like this open, sponsor therapy sessions, donate to social justice reform. You know, right now our community needs racial healing, and there's so many opportunities and ways to do that. And again, having therapy sessions, you know, as a mom, I had to take some time to take a day off to like personally get my mind together, right? And thank God for people like Dr. Black who can give you some skill sets, right? So invest in people like her who can give like actual, you know, women ways to cope with this and deal with this and move forward from this. Like we need more of that in our communities. And I think, you know, we need some real living room conversations, like, you know, wherever, I'm not sure where everyone lives, but wherever you live, come to the city, come to where the Detroiters are, come to where, you know, your African Americans are, bring us out to where you are. Let's invite them to dinner. Let us invite you to dinner. You guys are all welcome to come to my table, right? Let's have a conversation and actually let us introduce this new generation of kids, and we just, like, if you meet, I feel like sometimes, like, if people meet my family, they'll say, oh, these are wonderful men. Your husband is so nice and gentle, and it'll help to tear down stereotypes, right? Let's have more of those dinners to tear down these stereotypes.
Wow, thank you, Latrice. That's good stuff. Good stuff. So, Ben, you're triggering all kind of thoughts, and I can't jump on everything, but there's a movie, and Sharona, if you know the name of it right away, but I can't think of it, but it stars Samuel Jackson and McConaughey, and it's the court movie, and somewhere in the movie, he says, Jake, you the enemy. He said, you don't know me, we not friends. You ain't never been to my house, our kids ain't never played together. And so he's basically saying, you know, I know you want to help, but you don't even know me well enough to help. Get to know me. And that's what I love about the relationship that Sharona and I have. We are getting to know each other. We don't know everything about each other, but we spend enough time with each other in different scenarios where we get a chance to dialogue about things. And we don't always agree on everything. So it's not like this buddy, we laugh and we agree all the time. We've gone head up about some stuff, but we can agree to disagree and still love each other, like each other, and still want to be friends and have a relationship. And so sometimes the conversation is a difficult conversation to have, but that doesn't mean you turn and run and say, well, I can't talk with those people. And we don't say the same thing about you. Those people really don't want to hear what we have to say. You know, but we have to realize that we are all people. We are humanity, and we need to be humane with one another. So talk about some things that you think that we can do to impact change, Deborah. What would you like to see happen? What are some things you think might make a difference? You have to unmute yourself.
Well, gatherings such as what we're having now, to have dialogue, to put our heads together, especially since we have people that are interested in hearing what we have to say, to just continue to have dialogue such as what we have now and see what we can come up with. I love the idea that they're so willing and ready to even just listen. That's a big start right there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great, thank you. You know, one of the things that I think about when I've done these kind of conversations before is, again, just looking at terminology, and that's probably something that we can even look at doing as a future gathering, to talk about the impact of terminology and how we phrase things, because sometimes the way we say what we say is offensive, even though we don't mean for it to be. You know, I watched a conversation the other night between a suburban and an urban church, and the suburban pastor was saying, you know, we're excited, we're looking forward to having him preach here at our church. And then his comment was, and this boy can preach. Now, colloquially, we know what he meant, but you're sitting next to a grown man who's a pastor of a church and you call him a boy. This boy can preach, as opposed to this man can preach, this guy can preach. And again, he didn't mean anything at all by it. But the people who were listening, people started texting in and sending messages about just terminology. And then he followed up by saying, and we're looking forward to bringing our church to the city. We're going to bring our stage and bring our sound equipment. We're going to set things up. And that's wonderful. And then he followed it up by saying, the service is at 11 o'clock in the morning. So I need for all of you to come to the city. Don't worry, it's early in the morning. It'll be okay. Almost like if you come later in the day, it's not okay. And then he says, and they're right by the 2nd precinct, so you don't have to worry. You got police coverage. I just thought you were doing good up until that point. You know, so sometimes the things that we say, even though it's well-meaning and well-intended, kind of just cuts the message. Rhonda, what are some things we can do? What do you think would be helpful as we move forward? And then I'm coming to you next, Vanessa.
Well, I think I would echo a lot of what Latrice has already said, and nothing comes to my mind right now in terms of anything different. But I think the ongoing conversation is key in getting to know one another. I posted a Facebook video of this Black man with dreads, and he went through and talked about his background and the things that he liked and his dislikes. And he says, I want you to get to know me, you know, before you arrest me. Like, he don't just stereotype me. Yeah. Get to know what type of person that I am. And so I think that's key. Those are key conversations to have, because when you get to know one another, you see each other as human, other than what you thought the other may have been.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Vanessa, what do you think would be helpful in terms of moving forward? What are some things that you think that we can do?
I agree with a lot of the things that have already been said. I would like to add, though, that building relationships from the heart, really reaching out to people that perhaps you might have been a friend with, or you know, you would like to get to know better, that, you know, not just African American, but any other ethnicity. I think we need to just come out of our comfort zone, but be cognizant of what we're saying and how we're saying different things. I think it's a heart issue that we really need to examine ourselves if we are being prejudiced, or if we're being noticing our thoughts, noticing if we're suspicious of people, noticing when comments that are being heard that we might hear from our friends or our relatives, being able to stop them or to some kind of way address them. I think that we could definitely do more about our environment, about who we are personally, and about our family and our friends and our neighbors that may hold very ugly, prejudiced, racist type of opinions. So being able to use wisdom, but also just being ready to make change, ready to see that there's some things that need to be addressed. Another thing I think is so important is the generations. Looking at the millennials, look at all these young people that are out here, Black, white, all different ethnicities, Hispanics, Asians, and they're all out there with Black Lives Matter signs. Listening to them, understanding that that generation, a lot of these young people, they're watching what we have said. They're watching what has been done. They're angry about the history that they're being, maybe that's being presented in their schools, and their parents didn't tell them about this history. And now they're finding out a lot of the truths. I think a lot of truth needs to be revealed. You know, we need to have better education about our past, what has happened in our country. Recently, I was reading some quotes from Frederick Douglass, and we're getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July. He was almost prophetically sharing on the 4th of July. He had this major speech, and he talked about the disparities and the inequalities and the injustices. And, you know, it's exactly what we're facing today. So just understanding there's been a lot of lies. And I'll give you one quick example, and that's Columbus Day, who discovered America. Really? Okay, let's understand the history that we're talking about, and just reaching out and embracing one another. I have a dear friend who happens to be Jewish. Her name is Brenda Naomi Rosenberg. And when all of these different things was happening with the riots and all these killings, she texted me right away. She knew the hurt that I was feeling, the cries. And she said, Vanessa, I'm so sorry to hear this. So reaching out to friends and people and just acknowledging that, I'm sorry for this hurt. I'm sorry for what's going on in this country. I'm here for you. I love you. Many times that's all people want to hear. Are you listening? Do you kind of understand what we're going through?
Thank you, Vanessa. One of the things that I thought about, I think, is Donna. She's out in the store and she has her mask on. And I thought that's one of the things that we need to do. We've been wearing masks before coronavirus. In some ways, we were never really authentic or genuine with one another. We say what we think somebody wants to hear. We say what's going to be appropriate, and I can be the queen of being appropriate. We say what's going to not make waves and not cause trouble. But the reality is some trouble may need to be stirred up. Healing takes place sometimes when things are stirred up. And so we just need to go ahead and be real. Being real doesn't mean being rude. Being real doesn't mean being hostile. But there's a way to be authentic and genuine and to say what needs to be said in a way that it can be heard. And that's what I'm always encouraging people to do. It doesn't matter if you say it in a way that people can't hear it. You have to give it to people in a way that they can receive it. And so to be able to talk about those kinds of things, so we need to take our masks off. One of the things I laugh about, think about some of the time that Sharona and I have spent together. My hair is curly when it's wet and washed. And this is like my new official style. Thank God that I didn't have to go to the hairdresser since they were all closed. But then there's also times when I press and straighten my hair, and then I have to put it in rollers and curl it up. And I can remember when Sharona saw me one night, we had somewhere and I had rollers. She goes, "You have to do that every night? That would be way too much work." But to be able to dialogue and laugh about stuff like that, because that's real stuff, But if we don't spend time, we don't get a chance to talk about things like that. Or to be able to sit at each other's table and talk about the type of food that we're eating and talk about our culture and our background and our heritage, because that's important to us. That's me, that's my family, that's where I live. And I want you to know me, not just what you think I'm about, but know what I'm about for real. So again, we have some ideas on the table about things that we can do to move forward. I'm going to invite Sharona into the conversation at this point, because this was a conversation that we decided to have, but because she initiated. Vanessa, just like you said that your friend contacted you, my friend contacted me. And I want to apologize too, because even though I thought about that, we talk about these hidden prejudices and things that we may have. I didn't just tell somebody that my friend called. I was telling people my Jewish friend called. Why was it necessary to qualify which friend it was? Why couldn't I just simply say, my friend called and we're going to have a conversation? And I justified it to myself by saying, but it is a conversation between Jewish women and African-American women. And so I was able to make it sound appropriate, but why was that even necessary? Sharona?
Okay, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted, yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I'm okay with you calling me your Jewish friend, because that really is an important part of my identity. So I'm really okay with it. And Vanessa, I just want to tell you that Brenda's my close friend too. Okay.
I wanted to be on the call tonight, Sharona. She wanted to be part of that 100 women.
Yeah. Well, Brenda is just part of the story. I mean, she is really a wonderful healer in the community. I want to preface what I want to share, and then I'm going to call on some of the friends that have joined today by telling you one of the disturbing parts of having these kinds of conversations, and how that you can only hope that when you finally get off the phone, or you're on a walk with somebody and you say goodbye, that you hope that there's some kind of lingering glimpse into an enlightenment, a light bulb will go on. Let's just hope. So I won't mention the person's name, but she is a sweetheart inside, and I know that she is, but she is rather naive in terms of how the world is. And she was telling me about this. I told her about how important I thought it was to reach out to people that we've encountered in our lives, small or in big ways, and just kind of reach out, make sure they're doing okay, and share about that sad times, horrible times, do they need help, whatever. Anyway, so I said to her, I know that you have a neighbor that you're really close friends with. And she goes, oh, yeah, but they're not African American. The couple is from Nigeria. Okay. And I said, okay. They have 3 boys that they've raised. The boys were born in the United States. Do you think they identify just as Nigerian Americans or African Americans? And do you think that when they're walking in the streets or they're at the movies, that somebody's going to say, are they Nigerian or are they African American? Or are they just Black? So it's sort of like I could see the wheels in her head going a little bit. And I said, I know you've gone out to dinner with them. They come to your house. And I said, so I'm just wondering, did you reach out? No. I said, well, maybe you could. And she goes, well, I'll text them. And I said, texting is fine, but they're close neighbors. She goes, yeah, we go on some vacations once in a while with them. We went up to Charlevoix. And as I started to kind of pull this story out of her brain, she then shared with me a disturbing incident during that one vacation that she hadn't thought about in quite a long time. They were up in Charlevoix. They had checked into the hotel. They were then deciding that they were going to go to the local Big Boy and have a quick lunch before they go to the beaches or hiking or whatever they were going to do. And so they finished their meals, and my friend went to the cashier/manager, paid for the meal with her credit card, and then her neighbor, the husband, came up and he paid for his family's meal, and the cashier manager asked for his photo ID. Didn't ask for my friend's photo ID, asked for his ID. And she said something, she's a very quiet person, but she said, what? And she questioned out loud, thankfully, why did you ask him for the photo ID and not ask me? The gentleman, his reply was, don't worry about it. And he named the person's name, and let's just move on. And the families left. And I said to her, okay, so that memory is in your head. Did you ever discuss it further with him? No. Did you ever discuss it with your family? No. Did you ever share with your children? No. And I said, well, why did you allow that to stop there? I'm not saying you had to start something in Big Boy, but why didn't you let that opportunity go where you could say, I'm sorry that happened to you. It must be exhausting that you have to do this all the time. Okay, and so I saw the light bulb kind of go in her head. And I think that's the whole thing, is that if we see it or if we hear it, no one's saying that we have to confront the third person, right there who's doing that. But at the very least, I think, reintroduce the subject with the person who had to deal with this and try to gain some understanding from that perspective. So that, to me, is really the point of putting yourself in that person's position and in their shoes, their chair, their home, and really saying, Well, would I want this to happen to my spouse, my partner? Would I want this to happen to my children, my grandchildren? Would I want this to happen to my nephews? Do I want this to happen to any of my beloved family members? And you think in terms of that it's just by chance that your skin color is a different color. But saying that, I think that many of the suggestions that came up, I want to say to Latrice, there are some people who are on this call who have helped raise money, who write grants, grant proposals, who are wonderful writers for getting the media, their media's attention. So hopefully people will kind of connect. And Sabrina can, if you talk with Sabrina, she can, you know, tell you who to contact, or Sabrina can ask me. But all of these things. But the reason why I selected a lot of the well, everybody, because that I brought on the table, because each one, in a way, they're little mini activists as well in their extended circles. Just to give you a sense of who I'm, Deborah Darvik and Stacy Gittleman are beautiful writers, and they really inspire and start conversations on a variety of things. Ann Mendelbaum, who's on the call, works with teaching English. She's runs programs in schools to a lot of the newest American citizens from Mexico and Honduras and Guatemala and so many countries. We had Joanna Abramson, who is an attorney, Susan Lichterman, who's an attorney, both of them working with women and girls advocacy and some other programs and projects that sitting on several different boards. You know, I'm just quickly hitting, Naomi Levine was a staff person for the Jewish Community Council. You know, so I'm just quickly, everyone who's been on this have somehow have been involved with a variety of programs and projects dealing with whether it's interfaith or intergroup or interracial work. And even some of the people when they were much younger and could tolerate the heat, stood on the streets, holding the signs, participating in demonstrations. We have a famous Rabbi Abraham Heschel says that you pray with your feet. That's what he says, is that it's not just having this dialogue with God or thinking it in a meditation, but you pray by moving your feet. Yeah. And so for a lot of people, that is very inspirational. So I just want to open it up to some of the folks that I invited, if they would like to say something. Kind of raise your hand and I'll quickly call on you. Naomi. Wait, you gotta unmute. Naomi, unmute. There you go.
Okay. First of all, thank you for including me. This has been one of the darkest weeks of my life and also one of the most hopeful. Watching the demonstrations in every city, in every state in the country, I'm hoping that this is the time that things will begin to change. And I just want to share an experience. We have a family who is like my adopted brother, and originally they came from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they've raised two boys who are about the same age as my two boys and a daughter. And when the Pittsburgh synagogue incident happened, they were the first family to reach out to me to tell me how sorry they were. And there's a kinship that goes beyond, you know, that we are close family friends. I think the Jews and the African Americans understand oppression, and we've been together. I was, as Sharona said, I was part of forming the Coalition for Black and Jewish Unity in the city of Detroit, and it's one of the highlights of my life. But they got what I was feeling, this family, and they were the first ones to reach out. And that means something to me. So I just wanted to share that, and this has been the highlight of a dark week. And I look forward to the dialogue continuing, and I know I have some talking points that I need to put to use, so I thank you. And
Okay, Susan. Wait, you have to unmute. There you are.
I did. I've become the Zoom goddess these last 8 weeks ago. I had never heard of Zoom, and now I spend my life on it. So thank you also, like Naomi said, for including me in this dialogue. And one of my takeaways was the importance of listening. And I'm sorry I had to listen to all this, because I'm sorry this still exists. But thank you all for sharing and for talking and speaking with us. And I think that a lot of us are not quite as naive as the friend Sharona described, but most of us aren't quite as brave as Sharona either. And Sharona is all of our mentors and role models, and we're not always, don't always know what to say and how to express, where Sharona doesn't hesitate, even if she doesn't know what to say, to just reach out because she knows that's the right thing. I can't remember, someone said from the heart, maybe it was Vanessa who said about talking from the heart. So what I hope to take away, and as we continue with this, is helping us. I know I can write checks and I know but helping us with what to say and what to do, and to be part of one community moving forward. And it's something, I have 3 children, and my one daughter in particular is chief of staff for a state senator in Chicago, and she deals with, she saves the world, as we like to say, and she does, and I think I've done something right, that the next generation seems more comfortable in her skin than I am, but I'm still learning and want to get to that place. And I'll end my story with my ally text me. I live in Huntington Woods, and there was going to be a march. There is a march right now in Huntington Woods for what's going on. And so she texted her dad and I from Chicago to make sure that we went. And I text back, I'm having a dialogue with Black and Jewish moms. And she said, you go, Mama, you go. So I'm glad I made my daughter proud, but I also want to make all of us proud. So help us, and help us continue the dialogue.
Okay. It's interesting because on Maple and Orchard Lake, there was a demonstration today. There was one in Bloomfield Hills, and I know there's Oak Park today, and or Huntington Woods today, Oak Park on Sunday. So the network is out there with people, you know, getting out there to kind of have this roaring response. Do we have anybody else that want to say something? Deborah?
Unmute yourself, Deborah.
Oh, Deborah, you're still not muted. I mean, you're still.
I can help her. Okay, there you go.
Hmm?
All right, Deborah.
Okay, it kept muting itself back. Maybe it didn't want me to talk. Not the Zoom goddess. Thank you for enabling me to witness and listen. That I've been struggling this week, appalled and upset. And I just appreciate the opportunity to hear these stories, to hear your stories and your pain and honesty. And I want to get to know you all. And I would like to see where this goes. I put on a necklace today that I made years ago. It's just black stones, but there's 2 butterflies and a frog. And I call it my metamorphosis necklace, and I wasn't sure why I had it on. But maybe it's for this afternoon's talk that all of this upheaval can also be metamorphosis. And so in that spirit, I'll say thank you, Shabbat Shalom, and Lahit Raot, which means until we meet again. And again, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Do we have any? Oh, wait. We have Hillary.
I'm sorry I'm late. This is my 3rd Zoom today. And
well, welcome, Hillary.
Thank you. Vanessa asked me to come on. I taught for 38 years between Detroit and Birmingham. And my specialty is, as Vanessa knows, is children's books, diversity in children's books. I was on the Coretta Scott King jury for 2 times. And so my background is using children's books to teach, but also to mend. So that's one of my passions. And I'm on 5 diversity boards right now. So this would be another one that would be phenomenal to be on. I live in Oak Park, and my daughter is at the Huntington Woods thing. She's 23 and she is Chinese, and I brought her home from China, and I'm a single mom, and she was brought up Jewish and bat mitzvah and so forth. But it's taken her a long time, even with an activist mom, to get into it and understand it all.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anyone else at this point?
I don't see any other hands, but I want to invite Valerie. Valerie Grimes. Valerie was also someone I invited. Valerie is a school principal, but I want to have her share a little bit about herself and why this was important to you to be on this conversation, Valerie.
Well, thank you for letting me be a part of it. I am not Jewish and I am not African American. And I'm just really grateful to be here, to hear the stories. I have been part of Kingdom Women, which is a group that Sabrina has been leading for the last 2 years. And actually more like 3 years. I think we're at the 2.5-year mark. But the first time I met Sabrina was at an event at her home. And I walked away just saying, okay, I want these women to be my friends. There was such a sweet spirit in the room and in the place. And so the Kingdom Women have taken me in, and I'm forever grateful for that. And then, you know, I've spent the last 30 years of my career in public education and always trying to close the achievement gap. I'm currently a principal at an elementary school in the Waterford School District. Oh. And I was just talking to Sabrina and to Deborah that what I've come to recognize is it's not an achievement gap, it's an opportunity gap. Mm-hmm. And so how do we provide better opportunities from, you know, birth to the end of life? How do we provide better opportunities and equal opportunities? And so we're talking about that a little bit among our group, and I don't know, I just feel burdened. I just feel burdened. And I wrote down the prayer that you said that the rabbi says, pray by moving your feet. Mm-hmm. I think that's beautiful. And I have been to protests, and I have stood there and held up my sign. And I will tell you that at my first protest, a man looked at me with a big smile on his face, and I thought, oh good, he likes my sign. And he said, ma'am, your sign's upside down. So that was my first protest. I've gotten it right. at protests since then, but you know, standing at a protest, I get why that's important, but I do feel like I stood there with my sign and I thought, well, now what? So what's my action step? And is it just in doing my job well? And you know, is that it? Is it something more? And I just feel like there's always something more to do and to be done. So you know, I don't know what will come of this group, but whatever it is, I'd love to be a part of it.
Great, thank you. Rosemarie, if you'd like to unmute yourself, we'd like to hear from you as well. Do you need help?
No, he didn't.
All right, you're okay?
I think I got it. Okay, I got it. Hi, I'm Rosemary Spadafora, and Vanessa invited me to come, and I am neither Jewish nor Black, obviously not Black, but I thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. I feel very privileged to be able to hear your stories, and I think it's so important for white women to listen because we have blind spots. And we need to hear these stories because our experiences aren't the same. And I just feel like it's been wonderful to be a part of this. I just posted in the chat that this Sunday at 1 o'clock, there's a car caravan starting at 8 Mile and Woodward and driving all the way up Woodward into Birmingham. And if anyone wants the flyer, I put my email address there, and I can send it to you. If you just send me an email, I'll be happy to do that. We'd love to see as many people as possible participate in that. So
great, thank you so much. And she didn't mention that she's a part of the group Women Confronting Racism. And so she's also an activist as well. Just quickly, Kimberly, if you want to just say a few words. You missed the opportunity to share your testimony, but just you can greet everybody, just so we can hear your voice.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Black, for inviting me. It is definitely a privilege, and I did jump on kind of late. I have some youth that are really struggling because of what's happening, and I just want to say that as important as it is for us as adults, it is absolutely important for us to remember that there are youth out there that want to make a difference. And the youth that I'm working with, they're young people. They're 9, 10, 11, and 12 years old. So it's a privilege to be a part of this call. It is definitely something that I believe in diversity. And I'm here to serve, to help, and to be a part of groups like this. So thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Was there anybody else? So well, we've got 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to start winding down.
Anybody else who didn't get a chance to say something that wanted to? Okay, so in terms of action steps and what now, what next, we've invited everybody to share your contact information in the chat so that we can have that for follow-up. Sharona and I will meet and talk about what are our next steps forward. Definitely we will be having another opportunity like this to come together again to talk about some of the ideas of what can we do logistically. I mean, want to put our feet to action. You know, we say faith without works is dead. So we got to do something now that we believe that something needs to be done. And what are we going to do? I know already I'm scheduled to have more conversations like this with Vanessa and some groups of people, with Latrice and some groups of people. I would encourage some of you maybe even to have a conversation with some of your family and friends. Also think about maybe 3 to 4 other women that you're thinking, man, she really should have been a part of this call tonight. She missed this one, but when we have the next one, because again, this was an invitation only. People kept saying, is it posted on Facebook? And I know everything's posted on Facebook, but this was not posted. We will post the dialogue. People can see what we talked about, but they didn't get a chance to be a part of this one. But in the future, we may open it up to whoever want to come. But right now, we're looking for people who really want to get involved and make a difference, not just people who want to have rhetoric. We're not just looking for conversation, but we are looking to move from anger and outrage to action. We want to be able to do something about what it is that we're feeling. And so I'm so thankful for all of you for sacrificing your time to be with us. Sharona, thank you for calling me and thank you for reaching out. I know I was feeling some kind of way, and it's nice to know that my friend was too, and that together we can impact change. So I'll let you have the closing words and then we'll be out.
All right, I see by the Zoom group chat that we do indeed have people that want to stay connected.
Yes.
So at some point after Shabbat and after Sunday, so sometime next week, Sabrina and I will get together and put together a master list of people who participated in this call with their email addresses so that people can connect and with their name, so that if they're on Facebook, they can friend people. And so we'll be looking forward to having further conversation. So from my end, to my community members, I want to say Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to sign off because I have to finish up dinner preparations and get my candles lit for Shabbat. So I want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody, which means to have a peaceful Sabbath, and bless you all for participating with us tonight.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Blessings to all of you.
Thank you.
God bless, ladies.
God bless.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Kingdom Women.
Bye. I love you.
Love you too.
All right. Thank you.